I think it is clear to believe in the power of ideas.
Fresh thinking to the Manhattan Institute.
You know, I promised that tonight we're going to celebrate good works by great people and not dwell on public policy. But if you'll permit me, I'm going to break that promise just briefly. This is the Manhattan Institute here. You know, it's important to keep in mind that the American philanthropic tradition that we're celebrating tonight has long relied on government encouragement, but not on government direction. And on these fronts, I'm afraid I have to report to you there's reason for concern today. Consider a key element that encourages our philanthropy, the charitable tax deduction. The current administration in the White House has repeatedly made it clear that not only would it prefer that tax rates on higher earners be increased, but the value of the charitable deduction not increase to keep up. That would mean hundreds of millions of dollars that would go to the federal treasury rather than to people like our award winners tonight. As for direction, we hear proposals that are taken seriously by congressmen and state legislators to insist that nonprofit organizations be allowed to keep their tax exemption only if they engage in certain types of activities or include certain people on their boards. And we've already seen the establishment of a special White House fund that makes its own grants to nonprofit organizations with the proviso that they must be matched by the private philanthropic sector. Down that road logically leads government direction of charity, and it's a far cry from that world of Tocqueville that I discussed earlier. These threats to the traditional independence of philanthropy are serious enough to have inspired a major new effort that I'd like to call to your attention tonight. It's called Voices for Philanthropy, and as the Chronicle of Philanthropy put it, it's designed to build support for foundations and protect the field from government regulation, to encourage nonprofit and community leaders to spread positive stories about the impact of our current philanthropic system. That's what we're going to do here tonight. Voices for Philanthropy is a new initiative begun by the Philanthropy Roundtable, whose president, Adam Meyerson, is a member of our award selection committee, and he's with us tonight. Adam Meyerson. Speaking of our selection process, we have one, by the way. I'd like to recognize two members of our award selection committee who are here. From the Draper Richards Fund in San Francisco, Anne-Marie Burgoyne. Anne-Marie. And the longtime program officer at the Smith Richardson Foundation, Cheryl Keller. Together, we start with hundreds of nominations sent to us by donors. If you've got good ideas for next year, please keep us in mind. Around the country, we winnow them down to 10 finalists, and each of the finalists is visited either by me or by Cheryl Keller. The committee then chooses the 5 winners after some spirited discussion and balloting. We now turn to our awards. We'll first present our annual Innovation in Social Entrepreneurship Awards to those who have founded and run young but already successful and very promising organizations which may change their fields. And following those 5 awards, we'll turn to our William E. Simon Lifetime Achievement Award in Social Entrepreneurship. Let me start by introducing several past winners who are with us tonight. The New Jersey Orators have used public speaking practice and competition as a way to prepare disadvantaged minority youth for success in higher education and the world of work. With us from Somerset, New Jersey is their founder, James Hunter and Eloise Samuels. James and Eloise. And on Chicago's southwest side, the United Neighborhood Organization has used a network of charter schools to put together a curriculum for the Americanization, you heard me right, for children of Mexican immigrants, while encouraging their parents to naturalize as citizens. From Chicago, we're joined by their director, Juan Rangel. Juan. And finally, we're joined by the 2007 Simon Prize for Lifetime Achievement, a man who has done so much to make possible the renaissance of New York City, the founder of the Bryant Park Restoration Corporation, Dan Biederman. And now for our 2010 award winners. Many of you I know are familiar with the powerful new documentary film, Waiting for Superman. It's brought wider attention to the demand for and accomplishments of urban charter schools, arguably the most important educational innovation in a generation, giving disadvantaged students the chance to reach their academic potential. But the authorization to open a charter school does not come with a building in which to hold class. That's a problem for children and a distraction for educators. And that's where our first award winner, David Umansky, the founder of Civic Builders here in New York, realized he had a way to help. Today, you'll find the fruits of his labor in the form of charter school buildings in Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, the Bronx, Washington Heights. These are charter schools whose construction costs have been held down by Civic Builders' financial acumen and which do not have to depend on the kindness of city government in order to be assured of having a place to hold class. They can concentrate on what's important, helping kids learn. Nominated by Lauren Franks of the Tiger Foundation, please join me in welcoming David Umansky of Civic Builders.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, everybody. We're so honored to be here. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Civic Builders. Our phenomenal board of directors, Mimi Corcoran, one of our board members, is here, and our staff who's worked so hard to accomplish what Howard's talking about. I thought I'd just take a minute to tell you in a little bit more detail about the work that we do. We occupy a unique place at the nexus between education and real estate, and our thesis is as follows. A poor education follows a child throughout his or her life to devastating impact. And in New York City, there are great charter schools that are doing good work to improve the lives of children. But the largest hurdle for these charter schools to expand is facilities. So one of the fact that has sort of motivated me in this work is that in 2010, 55,000 New York City school children applied to charter schools, and there were only 11,000 spots, which means for every child learning in a charter school today, there are 4 who would like to but cannot. The charter real estate situation in New York City is so tight that some schools are forced to delay opening, some schools delay opening, and other schools with great educators are forced to abandon their plans altogether. The problem is simple. Charter schools are not managed by real estate managers, they're managed by educators. And charter schools aren't capitalized for real estate transactions, and that's not going to change. To set up charter schools and the children they serve for success, we need to solve the real estate problem, and that's what we do at Civic Builders. Our work is similar to a residential or a commercial real estate developer. We find sites and negotiate acquisitions and financings. We hire architects to design the buildings and contractors to build them. And to be clear, we don't work with any charter school. We only work with the best. And you've heard about how well these schools are doing. And what's important about that is that when we apply our real estate experience to a charter school with a great educator, that educator focuses his or her time on educating children, which is what they should be doing. I'd like to talk for a minute about how we use our resources. Civic, since we were founded in 2002, has raised $25 million. And with that $25 million, we've built $450 million of school buildings. So to say that, oh, thank you. I'll take that. So to say that again, we've leveraged $25 million 17 times to build $450 million of real estate for children. That's a portfolio of 12 buildings, 7 of which are complete, 5 are in construction or about to start construction. And that's important because these 12 buildings are going to serve 7,000 children each year in neighborhoods like the Bronx and Harlem and Brooklyn, and we're doing some work out in Newark, New Jersey. To put our portfolio in perspective for you, outside of the city's school construction authority, we're the largest builder of we're the largest builder of school buildings in the area. And I'd like to explain something that's particularly interesting, at least for me, about civic builders, and that's that we invest in real estate, which I've said, which carries a different equation than many nonprofit business models. Here's an example of what I mean. In Harlem, we invested $1 million in a building which Howard came out and took a look at that serves 700 charter school students, and that's a great start. But over the next 30 years, tens of thousands of children are going to learn in that building. And just 7 years from now, Civic Builders is going to recoup that $1 million and have it available to build more buildings and serve more children. And we can do that again and again and again. And that adds up. So that's our story in short. We solved the facilities problem so that parents and children can have more choice in New York City. I'm more than happy to discuss civic builders at more length, and if anyone's interested. I want to thank the Institute. This is a tremendous honor. I guess I didn't realize even how big an honor it was until I'm standing up here and looking at all of you, and also hearing about all the other honorees. So thank you all for your time, and enjoy the rest of dinner.
Don't forget that. Thank you so much. You know, even as we seek to reform urban public schools, it's important to remember that America's school children have historically benefited from schools not operated nor funded by the government. Inner-city Catholic schools, in particular, have been rightly celebrated for successfully educating children of all backgrounds. Even as many have been forced for financial reasons to close, however, their tradition has taken on new life through the work of our next award winner. The Reverend John Foley started in 1992 on the west side of Chicago with a new idea: faith-based urban schools which would help stem the wave of city kids dropping out before completing high school, 50% in some communities, by reinventing an old idea: work-study. Today, the Cristo Rey network includes 24 high schools serving 6,000 students in 17 states and the District of Columbia. More than 1,200 companies are providing part-time jobs for its students, and virtually all its 2009 graduates were accepted to 2- or 4-year colleges. Nominated by donors B.J. Casson and William Simon, please join me in welcoming the man behind the Cristo Rey Network from Chicago, the Reverend John Foley. Thank you so much. Just put that right here, and then it'll be waiting for you.
You're sure? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in the name of more than 6,500 young people studying in Cristo Rey Network schools across the country, I am most pleased to accept this extraordinary distinction from the Manhattan Institute. Our network is still very young. The first school opened its doors only 14 years ago. We thought at that time that the work-study model was an innovative way to generate income, to provide a college prep, faith-based education to Center City students. Little did we know that the real strength of the program lies in the fact that these students are introduced into a world they never suspected would be accessible to them. What they discover is a future full of possibilities, which gives them hope, often for the first time. Once that happens, there is no stopping them. Although our schools are faith-based in the Catholic tradition, our students are not. Only 60% are Catholic. All young people who lack the resources for a private college prep education are welcome. Unfortunately, school closings get a lot more attention than school openings. But it is our privilege to continue the long Christian history of attending to the immigrant and minority populations of our country. Today, we have 9 new schools in some stage of preparation, all in addition to the 24 that are now up and running. We have over 1,800 corporate partners who hire our students. And if anybody's interested, we have representatives from the 3 schools here tonight that I can hook you up with if you'd like to give us a job. Because the jobs are our DNA. The jobs are the greatest thing that keep us going. We have over 1,800 corporate partners who hire our students. This year, our students are earning towards their own education in excess of $35 million. Thank you very much. So my thanks once again to the Manhattan Institute for this distinction. Thanks for helping us give hope to so many young people who thought they had been left behind. Thank you.
You know, there was a time when it was taken for granted that serious participation in sport was not just undertaken as a ticket to a college scholarship or a professional career. Instead, physical education was understood as a complement to academic education, a source of the discipline that students need to succeed. That's why Cecil Rhodes included athletic accomplishment as one of the criteria for the Rhodes Scholarship. This is the tradition that Greg Zaff has successfully revived by recruiting hundreds of inner-city students to the sport of squash, both through his own Squash Busters program in Boston and through the National Urban Squash and Education Association, with affiliated programs in soon-to-be 10 cities across the country. He's built a state-of-the-art facility. This place is beautiful, believe me, thanks to multi-million-dollar private gifts, and helps students who combine squash with academic mentoring on to some of our top private schools. He's proven that a gentleman's game can be a route to molding new young ladies and gentlemen. Nominated by James Pearson, please join me in welcoming from Boston, Greg Zaff.
I'm very honored to receive this award from the Manhattan Institute. To be honest with you, for the longest time, I never saw myself as a social entrepreneur. I was just a guy trying to do something that really excited me and that I thought had a remote chance of succeeding. And for me, that happened to be uniting squash and urban kids in some kind of meaningful way. I've been involved with Squash Busters and the urban squash youth movement for 15 years now, and there are a few major takeaways I think are worth sharing. The first is just to say that it's the greatest thing in life to wake up every day loving what you do. And Squash Busters and now National Urban Squash and Education and the entire urban squash movement have been that thing for me for the last 15 years alongside my wife. And that's about a third of my life, and I'm very grateful for that. Secondly, squash is not, and it has never been, the magic bullet behind urban squash. The real keys to great programming are serving young people day in and day out over many years of their lives, having the highest expectations of everyone, especially yourself, and always remembering that people show up because they want to have some fun. Thirdly, Being unreasonably committed, I think, is the best way to be. People, and especially the kids, catch your drift quickly, and they rise up to be unreasonably committed with you. That's what makes organizations great, whether for-profit or non-profit. As regards to my being here and winning this award, I look at myself simply as the first stone tosser among many. There are several other very major stone tossers, each of whom is here tonight, who deserve recognition. The first, George Polsky, the founder and executive director of Street Squash in Harlem, which is now 11 years old and the largest of all our programs, has made every bit the contribution that I have to urban kids. George, if not for you and the chance I've had to team up with you and become such close friends, I'm not sure I would have stayed in this thing as long as we both have. I also want to talk about two people very close to George, and those are his parents, Virginia and Richard. Not only did they give birth to George, but they have been some of the longest and kindest and most devoted supporters of urban squash, not just George's program, but my own and the entire spirit and movement of urban squash. And they're great people. Bill Simon, who most of you probably know, is a great friend of mine. He is the chairman of National Urban Squash. He signed on with me to Squash Busters way back before it was even a program, and he has been the driving force behind growing this idea so it serves many, many more kids. Bill, you're just a dear friend. I love being with you. You inspire me, and I'm grateful for everything you do. Sven and Larry Carlin, who are here tonight. The two of you and your kids have given more for urban squash in more ways than anyone I know. You gave Danny a new lease on life by taking him in and taking him on these past 15 years. And you really set the spirit in your family for what giving and caring about others is all about. Thank you. And last but not least, to my wife, Sonia, it really is no accident that I found you at the same time that I found Squash Busters. You're the foundation of my life and the foundation of love and belief upon which I've been able to experience my own happiness and success with urban squash. So I thank you all for this incredible honor. I'm very grateful to be here tonight.
You know, just as it is with Cristo Rey's graduates, more and more of America's college students are attending not four-year colleges, but two-year community colleges. These days, in no small part, because they're less expensive. But how can we be sure that those in two-year schools who have the talent and the drive to go further with their education and succeed at higher levels will have that chance, or that they'll even know what opportunities are available to them? Identifying and assisting talented community college students is the mission of our next award winner. Scott Stimfel, the founder of Resources for Educational and Employment Opportunities, has not only built a network of community colleges willing to use his approach to help what he calls rising stars, he's lived the life of those he's now helping. Nominated by Gabriel de la Rosa of his corporate partner KPMG, please join me in welcoming from South Pasadena, California, Scott Stimfel.
Howard did have to put me towards the end, so there's a lot of tough acts to follow. 43% of all undergraduate students are community college students. 42% of all first-generation students
are community college students. 45% of all African American undergraduate students are community college students. 53% of all Hispanic college students are community college students. What do all these students have in common? Only 13% of community college students go on to attain their BA. There's a significant crisis facing this country. Community colleges educate approximately 50% of our students, and it's the only gateway for their education. If we do not educate these students and help them move to a four-year university, not only is it going to hurt our country economically, but it will have implications to our national security, our healthcare, and the list goes on and on. Resources for Educational Employment Opportunities was founded by myself and two other community college alumni students. We founded the organization because we wanted to empower other community college students to transfer to university, to graduate, and to graduate with a job. It wasn't easy, and it hasn't been easy. We were actually laughed at a lot of times when we walked into foundations and we told them what we wanted to do. They said, community college students, we don't care about them. We went to corporations. We said, can you help us? We've made it. We want to help those that didn't. There's a talented group of students out there. Many closed the door on us. But we persisted. And Rio's goal and what we've done is to empower community college students by providing academic, professional, and leadership opportunities so that the community college students can not only transfer, graduate, and graduate with a job. I've said it once, I've said it twice. The reality of the situation is that Rio is much more than a programmatic organization, but we're a family. And it's a family atmosphere that we've created. And we've started to change the mindset of not only community college students, but community college administrators and university administrators. To date, we've transferred 100% of our community college students that have participated in our program. And to that, I would like to thank our family members that are here. From the community college space, Kingsborough Community College, Reza and Liz, and Brian, and a corporation that stood by us right from the beginning, KPMG and Gabe Del Rosa, thank you. I would also like to thank the students that serve as not only my inspiration, but the inspiration for our board and for our partners. Two of the students are with us tonight, Devin Leung and Stephen Rodriguez. Devin came from Pasadena City College, my home school, and Gabe's home school, and he's now at Columbia University. Stephen Rodriguez is at Kingsborough Community College, and he's a rising star there, and he will be transferring to Cornell University in the fall next year. I would also like to thank God for this opportunity because I've had a lot of doors closed. I have, and it's been tough. And having this opportunity and being awarded this award is a great honor. And it's not just for me and what I've gone through in building this organization, but it's for all the students and bringing recognition to the community college students that work so hard and the administrators that work so hard day in and day out to make their academic and professional aspirations a reality. And so thank you, Manhattan Institute, for recognizing us.
It's not often that one gets to introduce someone with the accomplishments at a young age of Eric Greitens. He's a former Navy SEAL for whose service in Iraq and Afghanistan he earned both the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star. He's a Rhodes Scholar, a Truman Scholar, served as a White House Fellow. His essays in photography, drawn from his service in such humanitarian relief zones as Rwanda and Cambodia, were collected in his book, Strength and Compassion, which was a 2009 Grand Prize winner at the New York Book Festival. He holds a doctorate in politics from Oxford. All of which is to say that he is a person with a great many professional opportunities and options, other than using his own funds to start a new nonprofit, both to help Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and to change the way the country thinks about them and their service. But that's what he's chosen to do in the form of the organization whose name describes his vision of life after military service. The mission continues. Eric can describe his vision of the citizen soldier far better than I can. Nominated by James McCausland, father of Iraq veteran and Mission Continues fellow Casey McCausland of St. Louis, please join me in welcoming from St. Louis, Missouri, Eric Greitens.
Howard, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So when I think back on my service, 3.5 years ago, I was serving in Iraq with an excellent group of Americans. And one of the things that I notice when I reflect back on this night and the nights that I spent 3.5 years ago in Iraq is that dinner here is much nicer. So you should all know that dinner here is much nicer. It's a fantastic dinner. It's a wonderful opportunity. And when I was serving in Iraq, I was serving as the commander of an al-Qaeda targeting cell. Our job was to capture senior al-Qaeda leaders, especially those in and around the Fallujah area. And in March of 2007, I and my team were hit by a suicide truck bomb. I was very fortunate in that my wounds were minor. I was taken to the Fallujah Surgical Hospital. I was treated there, and 72 hours later, I was able to return to duty. It was also the case, though, that some of the people in my unit, some of whom are standing closer than Howard is to me now, were hit a lot harder than I was. And so when I came home, I went to visit with my friends who had been injured. And I also went to Bethesda, to the Naval Hospital, to visit with some of our recently returned wounded Marines. And I know that many of you in this room have had the opportunity to visit with some of our recently returned wounded soldiers. And you will know that when you walk into one of those hospital rooms, you have a moment to talk with a young man or woman, 21, 22, 23 years old. And you ask them a little bit about their deployment, you ask them about their hometown, you ask them about their service, and then you ask them, what do you want to do when you recover? Every single one of them says to you, I want to return to my unit. They all say to you, I want to return to my unit. Now the reality for us is that day, the men and women who I was visiting were not going to be able to return to their unit. One of them had lost both of his legs. Another had lost his right arm and part of his right lung. Another had lost a good part of his hearing. But I said to each one of them, I said, well, tell me if you can't return to your unit right away, tell me what else you'd like to do. And every single one of them told me that they wanted to find a way to continue to serve. One of them told me that he was interested in going home to become a teacher. Another one wanted to go home and become involved in law enforcement. Another one said, I had a really rough childhood growing up, and I'd like to find a way to go home and become a mentor and a coach. And what I've learned in the work that we do with wounded and disabled veterans, some of whom have lost their eyesight, some of whom have lost hearing, some of whom have lost limbs, that all of that they can recover from. What's truly deadly for them is if they lose their sense of purpose. And when I was walking out of the hospital that day, I realized that I was one of a long string of visitors who were all coming in to see these men and women to tell them thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And it was clear to me that they appreciated that. That meant a great deal to them to have people come into them and say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. But it was also clear that there was something else that they had to hear. And what they also had to hear is, we still need you. They needed to know that when they came home, we saw them not as problems, but as assets. And that we believed that they had strength that came from their military service that we wanted them to use again here at home in service to our communities. And so when I left that day, I called 2 friends who were disabled veterans. I told them about what I saw. They contributed the money from their disability checks. I put in my combat pay, and we used that to start the Mission Continues. And what we do at the Mission Continues is that we guarantee that every wounded and disabled veteran who comes home will be able to find a way to continue to live with purpose here as a citizen leader. And we place them in fellowships with nonprofit organizations and charitable organizations, like many of those organizations that are represented here, where they see that they have the potential to continue to serve and to continue to contribute. And that's how they rebuild lives of purpose. We're building today an incredible group of citizen leaders who are making all of our countries stronger. And we have a tremendous battle on our hands. As many of you know, here at home, we have tens of thousands of veterans who are coming home wounded and disabled, tens of thousands who are coming home with post-traumatic stress disorder. Today, as I speak today, tonight on the streets, there will be 9,000 veterans from the global war on terrorism who wore the uniform of our country overseas who are homeless tonight. The unemployment rate among global war on terrorism veterans is over 20%. But what I know is that through the Mission Continues, we have found a way to help all of those veterans rebuild a sense of purpose and continue to serve here at home. In the military, you learn, especially in special operations, you learn what is possible when a small group of incredibly dedicated Americans of high character come together to be of service. And what I've learned during the Mission Continues is that we have had not only this small group of Americans come together, but we have had over 11,800 volunteers around the country come out and do service projects with and alongside our wounded and disabled veterans in our communities. We have had thousands of people make contributions to the Mission Continues, and we have changed and shaped hundreds of lives, including the life, I'm very proud to say, of Casey McCausland, son of Jim McCausland, who's here with us tonight. What I know is that what all of these veterans have the possibility to do, right, through their example and through their service, they are able to unlock in all of us, right, the potential to serve with patriotism and to find ways to continue to serve in our communities. We have been able to unlock a movement in this country of courageous people who are dedicated to making sure that we win this battle here at home. That we make sure that every single veteran who comes home has the opportunity to become a citizen leader again. And tonight, we're honored to be recognized by the Manhattan Institute for Social Entrepreneurship. We're honored here to be with all of you tonight. We're honored to have you standing with us because we will win this battle. Thank you very much.
Before we turn to our Lifetime Achievement Award winners, please join me in thanking and recognizing all of our award winners tonight. Please stand up. Thank you. Thank you so much. We now turn to the highlight of our program, the presentation of the William E. Simon Prize for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship. And to present the award, it's my honor to call upon the co-chairman of the William E. Simon Foundation, a great friend of the Manhattan Institute, and a great philanthropist in his own right, Bill Simon.
Wow. Thank you, Howard. I have to just add my congratulations to all the honorees. I mean, I think you all are fantastic, and thank you for honoring us with your presence. It's an honor for me to be here tonight, of course, to present the William E. Simon Prize for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship. Before I announce this year's terrific winners, Lou Lehrman and Dick Gilder, I'd like to say a few words about a very important person in my life, my hero, my father. Dad, many of whom you know and remember from his time as Secretary of the Treasury during the Nixon and Ford administration, was a pioneer in many things, a true entrepreneur. He was our nation's first energy czar, and he was among the first in the business world to use the cutting-edge tool which is now known as a leveraged buyout. He wrote 2 best-selling books that advanced the cause of free market ideas that at the time were thought to be pretty radical. And when I ran for office 8 years ago, I can't tell you how many hundreds of people came up to me and said, "I read your dad's book. It influenced my life." Dad knew what it meant, as you all do tonight, to take risks, to try new things, as the saying goes, to take the road less traveled. He did it time and time again in his own career. And he had such esteem for those that were willing to take those kinds of risks, people like those that are honored tonight that displayed creativity and who themselves were pioneers in their chosen fields. Now, the purpose of the William E. Simon Prize for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship is to salute those very ideals that motivated Dad during his lifetime. Free enterprise, effective philanthropy, and helping people to help themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't imagine a better way to honor Dad's legacy than this prize and the 2 individuals who will be honored tonight. Dad hoped that this prize would become a hallmark for the power of personal innovation and initiative, motivating others to follow in those examples. So on behalf of my family, I have 6 brothers and sisters and 28 grandkids. We are honored and privileged that Lou and Dick will be the latest recipients of a prize that bears our father's names. They joined a distinguished group of former winners, and Howard mentioned one of them is here tonight, Dan Biederman, and I just can't tell you how grateful that we are. I also want to thank Larry Mohn and his colleagues at the Manhattan Institute for partnering with the William E. Simon Foundation in this important endeavor. Larry, thank you. I know how much work you and your colleagues do to put together not only this evening, but the prize. And I want to say a special thanks to your host this evening, Howard Husock. Howard, you are a great man and a social entrepreneur of the highest ideal yourself. And before we award the prize, I want to say one final word about my dear friend, Greg Zaff. Greg mentioned that we've had a friendship that's now dated 15 years. I only want to tell you one story about this true saint on earth. When Greg received notification that he would be given this award, not from me, but from Howard, and nominated by my good pal Jim Pearson, Greg was stunned to realize that with it came a cash prize. And so, being a very cautious fella generally, he called me and said, "I know what I want to do with the money." And I said, "Oh, that's great, Greg. What do you want to do with the money?" He said, "I want to give it to Urban Squash because I think it would be a great example to others." Ladies and gentlemen, I was blown away. As you might imagine, Greg does not make the same amount of money as the CEO of other institutions like Goldman Sachs or other places. And Greg, your example is an inspiration in many, many ways, and thank you, and God bless you. So now I'd like to briefly introduce our Simon Lifetime Achievement Award winners. As Howard noted, we're deeply fortunate in America to benefit by people like Lou and Dick that dedicate much of their life and resources to philanthropy. And the 2 winners tonight fall into a very special category. They combine generosity with imagination and courage to start new organizations from scratch and to place their own personal financial bets on them. Both Dick Gilder and Lou Lehrman have been, in effect, serial entrepreneurs. And tonight, we honor their work together in founding one particular incredible enterprise, the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. Because through it, they've not only gathered and preserved important priceless documents, but they've revived and nurtured our capacity to teach American history effectively through the next generation of citizens. They've talked about partnerships with schools, with teachers, and traveling exhibits, bringing to the public stories of the Civil Rights Movement, the Manhattan Project, the role of Alexander Hamilton, a great favorite of theirs, and other individuals at the time of our founding. Gilder Lehrman is preserving and inspiring our story of America, and implicitly inviting others to write down the next chapters, as you've heard tonight. Individually, Dick was a former chairman of the Manhattan Institute and specializes, in the words of Myron Magnet, who's here with us this evening, and I quote Myron, "fixing what wasn't working, burnishing what others had neglected, sometimes even to the point of heroic rescue, as was the case with Central Park." He shined up the New York Historical Society, built a dazzling new planetarium for the American Museum of Natural History, and supercharged the Yale Endowment. He did all this with what Yale President Richard Levin calls a deeply rooted entrepreneurial creativity that could, wrote Myron Magnet, see the seeds of great projects in tentative, unformed ideas and could bring them to fruition, not only through his own money and effort, but also by finding innovative ways to mobilize the talents, energy, enthusiasm, and resources of others. Lou Lehrman has also served more than 2 decades ago as trustee of the Manhattan Institute. In fact, I am told that he was the best landlord that the Manhattan Institute ever had, because he generously donated his own building to the Manhattan Institute rent-free. Lou, we all know you as pure an incarnation of a gentleman and a scholar as anyone will ever meet. A man of the finest discrimination, both morally and intellectually. Few men can be immensely successful in business and investing, and at the same time, outstanding scholars. Lou gave up a promising career, in fact, as an academic historian at Yale to save his family's struggling Rite Aid drugstore chain, which he later sold. And then, while running a flourishing investment business, he worked in the wee hours of every morning and every weekend to produce a historical work of real distinction, Lincoln at Peoria, The Turning Point. And as many of you will remember, he offered himself, and this is one of my favorites, in the service of New York State as a candidate for governor, and came breathtakingly close to victory. And as someone who has had a very similar experience, Lou, I can tell you I feel your pain. It is no understatement to say that his partnership with Dick Gilder is as consequential for the studying and teaching of American history as that of Rodgers and Hammerstein for the American musical. In 2005, in recognition in a ceremony at the White House in the Oval Office, Lou and Dick were awarded the National Humanities Medal by President George W. Bush for their work to promote the study, the appreciation, and love of American history. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in welcoming this year's winners of the William E. Simon Prize, Richard Gilder and Louis Lehrman. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was just breathtaking. I still haven't gotten my breath back, but I'm sure it'll come in due course. Thank you all for coming. Thank the Manhattan Institute, the Simon family, for this wonderful honor, which I know Lou and I both appreciate tremendously. You know, the study of American history is so rewarding. We're the only country, as most of you know, that was formed and based on ideas. And how those ideas continue and how they're interpreted is what really makes the story of our country so interesting and so terrific. Even aspects of it that are painful and embarrassing, such as slavery. It took us 90 years to come to grips with that, culminating in the Civil War. And then many years thereafter, we had Reconstruction, which didn't really work its way through until the Civil Rights Movement, thanks to Martin Luther King and the Kennedys in the 1950s. We've ourselves, Lou and I, spent some attention on slavery because it's a misunderstood and somewhat ignored part of American history, and yet very important. Thanks. When I was at Yale, for example, and I don't know whether Lou's experience was different, slavery was never mentioned. I majored in history. It was just not part of the curriculum. And yet, this was such an important part. I mean, in the 1700s, if you can imagine, every other day, a slave ship left Africa, headed to the New World. Every other day for 100 years. And this was a hugely important institution which affected life in 4 continents, and of course our country in particular. So we spent a lot of time on slavery just because it has been so misunderstood or underemphasized. We have the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition at Yale. We give the Frederick Douglass Prize every year, $25,000 for the best book. We have seminars, summer seminars, discussion groups. We spent a lot of time on it. And more and more people are coming to grips with the idea that this was part of our history. So I want to list for you the various, we spend a lot more time on things other than slavery. And I have a list here prepared by Jim Basker, who's our terrific chairman, of the things we've done in the last, say, 18 years. In 1994, the Gilder Lehrman Institute offered just one summer seminar for teachers, and it served 30 teachers. These are seminars which take place at universities or places like Monticello, where 30 high school teachers come and spend a week learning about the particular subject that they've come to focus on. In 2010, the Gilder Lehrman Institute offered 39 summer seminars for teachers, and they enrolled more than 1,100 teachers. In 1994, Gilder Lehrman Institute had about 30 teachers on its mailing list, all of them in New York City. As of 2010, Gilder Lehrman Institute has more than 80,000 teachers on its mailing list in all 50 states. In 1996, the Gilder Lehrman Institute founded the first history high school in the nation, the Academy of American Studies in Queens. Now, at a history high school, the kids give up all their electives and study American history during those slots. As of 2010, the Gilder Lehrman Institute has grown to a network of 33 flagship and 479 affiliate schools across the country. The National Institute of the Humanities has awarded us a $1 million grant to grow that network to 2,500 schools by 2014. In 1997, the Gilder Lehrman Institute started its first Saturday Academy at Notre Dame High School in New York City. As of 2010, we administer 20 Saturday Academies in schools and cultural institutions across the country. And on it goes. Whatever we've started is multiplied many times in these 16 years. And I want to thank Jim Basker, Leslie Herman, and the other folks at Gilder Lehrman, not to mention Lou, who put their shoulder to the wheel and made all these things happen. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank the Manhattan Institute and the Simon family for giving us this wonderful award. Thanks.
So, my dear friends, I collect in the correct order these pages which somehow in my pocket have been disassembled. But a minute. And these cards. Not 52. Only a very few will be made ready for you. This I honor, of course, and with deep gratitude, Dick and I do accept. But we accept it on behalf of the extraordinary team who built from scratch the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. We at the Gilder Lehrman Institute are humbled, especially given the presence and the provenance of the prize. Surely there was no better example of a free market entrepreneur and social philanthropist than William Simon Sr. I knew him very well, and to see Bill Simon Jr. quickens in my heart the memory of the man whom he not only resembles, but has in many ways become his peer. We salute and honor the memory of Bill Simon Sr.'s achievements. It is also a happy honor to thank his son, Bill Simon, to thank Larry Moan, Jim Pearson, Howard Husock, Les Lenkowski, Adam Meyerson, and the remarkable staffs of the Manhattan Institute and the William Simon Foundation. Now, countless people have said to me, we know about Dick and you and your team, what you have done, but how did you two come together? So let me tell you a story of inspiration and serendipity. Once upon a time, in the year 1954, a bright young man graduated from Yale. Some respectable member of his family thought he would make a respectable lawyer in New York. Dick Gilder applied to the Yale Law School, was accepted, bought the books, went to class. 3 weeks later, he fled. It's true. He fled to New York, there to become a stockbroker at A.G. Becker and Company. Thus began one of the most enterprising and successful investment vocations of my generation. Serendipity? 6 years later, in 1960, another ambitious lad graduated from Yale University and applied to teach at two citadels of respectability. As a lowly instructor, I was paid $3,500 at Yale, and then $2,500 the next year at Harvard. With this bear market of declining income, my dad, a very plain-spoken man, suggested I find a new vocation. And I did. Now, let us leap almost 10 years to the late 1960s. My company, a fast-growing firm, had gone public. Dick Gilder came down to see me in my office in a little Pennsylvania village called Shiremanstown. As you might expect, Dick wanted me to give him the company growth story. He asked a few questions, then went back to New York. He bought the stock. I was pleased because here was another long-term growth investor in my company. 3 days later, or was it 3 weeks later, he sold the stock. I think that's right. So let us now leap another 10 years. Dick and I were both living and working in New York in the late 1970s. Both the city and the state of New York were on the precipice of bankruptcy. Many here remember that. Dick and a few friends thought it was time for a businessman to be governor of New York. I, an immigrant from Pennsylvania, became the chosen vehicle. So we filed our campaign with zero name recognition, no political experience, only hope and an aggressive idea to reform New York on the basis of limited government and free market principles. From scratch, we built a political enterprise. No one was more important in raising the money and encouraging me than Dick Gilder. We overthrew the Republican establishment in the first primary for the governorship in New York State history. We won the primary in a landslide. But I cannot remember the name of my Democratic opponent. There was no more loyal and generous a partner in this exercise than Dick Gilder, except, I must say, for Louise, Thomas, and Peter, who are here tonight. However, at midnight on election eve, when it looked as if I might win, Louise was asked by a reporter what she thought of victory, whereupon she said promptly she would have to ask for a recount. No way to Albany. By this time, Dick Gilder had built a major successful firm at Gilder, Gagnon, Howe. After my stint at Morgan Stanley, Dick offered me some space in his ample office to start my fledgling investment firm. So one day he came into my small room. He peered over my shoulder at the catalogs of American historical manuscripts and documents that I was studying. "What are you doing?" he asked, as if to say, "Aren't we buying stocks here?" I told him that I had been building a modest collection of American historical documents since I had been in New Haven and Cambridge in the 60s. Dick was interested. He had been a history major as an undergraduate at Yale. He paused and made one of his instantaneous decisions. "Let's do this together." Another serendipity. And so the Gilder-Lehrman collection was born. It became the first building block in the edifice of what would become the Gilder-Lehrman Institute of American History. Now, about that time, Dick and I went to Gettysburg together. There, with the powers that be at Gettysburg College, we established the Lincoln Prize. At that meeting, a Gettysburg history professor insisted that as the most important historical prize in America, the Lincoln Prize should match the Pulitzer Prize award of $3,000. Dick interrupted him, dismissed the suggestion, saying that most authors would pay $3,000 for such a prize. It's true. No, he said the Lincoln Prize would be $50,000 or bust. And so it came to be. During the decade of the 90s, the collection grew as we built a business to vacuum the English-speaking world of American historical documents and manuscripts. Our distinct purpose was to make them available for the teaching of document-based American history. Later, the Gilder-Lehrman collection would be called by the experts the most important and comprehensive private collection of American historical documents and manuscripts. Now, this entire collection has been given to the Gilder-Lehrman Institute Library for the teaching of document-based American history nationwide. For the purpose of building the collection, Dick and I never appeared at an auction, nor did we negotiate with any dealers, nor did we ever individually buy a single document on a face-to-face basis. We hired a young man who knew much about coins, but little of American history. But he aspired to be a master of American history. His name was Seth Kaller. Serendipity, but we also needed a curator. At that time, I was teaching the Lincoln Seminar at Gettysburg College. My very best student, Sandy Trenholm, came to me at the end of her senior year asking advice on her vocation. What should she do? I answered her, Sandy, you're hired. Almost ever since, Sandy Trenholm has been curator-in-chief, presiding over a very large professional curatorial staff. She had no professional archival training. Serendipity, I think, too. Dick and I always aimed the Lincoln Prize and the collection at teaching the great saga of American history. We aimed at the formation of young men and women to be historically informed American citizens and balanced American patriots. Thus, the Gilder-Lehrman Institute was born. But we needed an executive director, a professional steeped in American history. So we hired Leslie Herman, a PhD in Russian studies. What a triumph her leadership has been. Serendipity, too. But Dick and I concluded that we also needed American history lectures in Manhattan to galvanize the collection and its pedagogical uses. So let us invite Sterling Professor, the distinguished Sterling Professor of History at Yale, the pioneer of global slavery studies, to lecture at the Morgan Library. The Morgan had generously given the rapidly expanding Gilder-Lehrman collection shelter in its august surroundings. In one meeting, after a lecture, Professor Davis proposed we do more teaching on American slavery. You don't understand, Professor Davis. You're hired. And so was born the Gilder-Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition at Yale. Serendipity, too. But all these initiatives needed to be coordinated as they were moving fast in different directions. Dick and I could not give full-time leadership, so we needed an outstanding American historian executive. So we recruited James Basker, a professor of English literature, specializing in the 18th century, a Johnsonian. He was and still is the commanding president of the Gilder Lehrman Institute. So what a triumph Jim Basker, Leslie Herman, and Sandy Tremont have pulled off in but two decades. To do this, they have assembled so many accomplished teammates, some of them in this room. Too many, I regret to say, that I may single out in this brief moment of gratitude. But let the honor and the credit for the Gilder Lehrman Institute be known as theirs. Let every Gilder Lehrman Institute man and woman stand at this moment. Including Dan Jordan over here. So, my dear friends, serendipity conspired with a gifted group of patriots, ordinary American citizens, all entrepreneurs, to mobilize a truth which had been sleeping for a generation, namely the unique, exceptional history of America and the plain necessity of teaching a self-confident understanding of American history to every American citizen from all walks of life and at every stage of their education. We know that we shall never escape the burden and the glory of American history. But even we here can shape the future of our common country and its common culture, determined as we are to keep America number one. Thank you to the William Simon Foundation and to the Manhattan Institute. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As I said earlier, all of our award winners were nominated by somebody. If you have somebody you want to nominate, please do so. The website opens in January, and we're very interested. That concludes our program for this evening. Please join me in recognizing all of our award winners. Thank you very much.
I think it is clear how fortunate we are to believe in the power of ideas.
Supply the common sense and the fresh thinking of the Manhattan Institute.